I'm Chris Campbell. I'm a practicing CPA, and I work with small businesses and individuals to help them pay the least amount of taxes possible while keeping them out of jail. So today I wanted to touch on something that I saw in the news today, and I dug a bit deeper into it. It was the news about Beyonce owing about $2.8 million in taxes. She got a $2.8 million tax assessment, and apparently she filed a petition in tax court. So essentially, the IRS came along and told her, "We took a look at your tax returns, and we don't agree with some of the deductions that you've taken. So we are going to disallow those and recalculate what your taxes are." And as I took a deeper look, part of that 2.4, 2.8, whatever it was, part of that was also a accuracy-related penalty. So what happens is that if the IRS comes along and they disagree with your return, with what you filed, they'll propose an edited return. So I think if there's like a 20% difference between what they think you should be paying and what you come up with, they do hit you with a penalty, what's called an accuracy-related penalty, for essentially saying, "Hey, look, you got your return wrong, and we're going to charge you for it." So, or with Beyonce being a business owner or being self-employed, she has a lot of expenses that are associated with, what she does. Now, I'm sure she has a number of different business ventures going on, so we don't know specifically what it's tied to, but I would probably venture to say, being that I saw that some of the deductions weren't allowed on Schedule C and E, probably tied to some sort of performance, and then some probably royalties, which you tend to report on Schedule E. So that's probably what it was tied to. They didn't go into that much detail. And I guess the issue that this is having is that they feel as though she's not able to substantiate or essentially prove some of the expenses that she applied to her returns. I would imagine that there was probably some back and forth between her representatives and the IRS prior to this petition being filed. What probably happened was they came to her and said, "We don't agree with some of these expenses that you've taken." Or even before that, what her representatives probably did was probably went to the IRS and said, "Hey, look, these are legitimate expenses." And I guess they went through the process of proving that she did indeed have those expenditures. And I'm sure it was the IRS took a look at it and they said, "Okay, cool. I'm sure we can prove that you spent this money, but we don't feel it's a legitimate business expense, so we're not going to allow it." And I'm sure that's what brought them to filing the petition. The lesson that others can take from this is that as business owners, it's important to substantiate your expenses. So, the old school way was just keeping receipts of everything. I guess you can, but I guess mostly in this world of digital currencies and digital payments, a lot of things can be traced now with digital confirmations. Most of the time you're using some sort of card or electronic, so a lot of that can be traced through statements, email confirmations, that type of thing. But it's important to just stay on top of that and at least be organized. And the other takeaway, which I guess is more specifically to those in the entertainment sector with Beyonce, what probably happened was they probably showed that she did indeed incur these expenses, but was the IRS said, "We don't think these are legitimate business expenses, and these are more personal expenses." It's a blurred line, because with my clients that are in the entertainment space, you want to stay up on appearances. If you are a public figure, you're going to work more on your appearances than you would than someone that's not necessarily in the public eye. But if you're in that entertainment space, that could be a difference between making some money and not making some money, right? It could be the difference between, landing some major deals and not having those deals. Entertainment is driven on appearance, brand, beauty. I'm sure if they didn't have that, there could be an argument that she wouldn't have the level of fame and money that she had. So there's a legit argument for allocating or spending money on beauty and appearances that in most industries wouldn't necessarily be a business expense. What I do with my clients, for those that are in that space, I try to be relatively conservative with that, because I know that in the entertainment space, that is a point of contention with the IRS. So for example, makeup, hair. I have clients that if they're going to a special event They may bring in a makeup artist because they want to make sure that they look right, or they're going to a particular event and you go and get your hair done. So now the question is that a business expense? For most folks, getting your hair and makeup done, not a business expense. But again, as a public figure, is this something that's considered necessary? Same thing with clothes. That's another touchy one, where if you're in the entertainment space, you may feel I gotta go to this event, I gotta look a certain way, I can't go on wherever. These might be clothes that if I'm not going to these type of events, I'm not wearing those clothes. When technically the rule for clothing, as far as being deductible, the technical rule is that if you're buying something specifically for that particular workplace. So the law was written with uniforms in mind. So if you had worked for UPS, for example, and they make you buy the uniforms, right? It's specifically for working for UPS. You wouldn't wear it from outside, but buying a suit, not necessarily because it is something that you could wear outside of going to work or conducting business, because it's not tied specifically to the business. So that's where it gets hairy, because let's say if you have someone that goes out and you buy a fancy dress and you're buying it for a particular event, that's tied to your work. It's not a uniform, so to speak, but most folks aren't really wearing this walking around the street, when these gowns and some of these outfits can be rather costly. So I can see where you want to be a bit aggressive to try to write that stuff off. What I do personally is I make sure to include it, but I try to be somewhat conservative, because I know that's an area that can get flagged often by the IRS. Going back to Beyonce, they're probably just going to settle. I'm sure what'll happen is once they bring this to court, there'll be an argument, because again, it's just so subjective in the sense as far as what's considered normal in her business and what isn't. But I'm sure they'll come up with a settlement, and she's probably going to have to pay something, maybe not that much, but she'll come up with something. But I'm sure it's something that happens pretty regularly with folks in the entertainment space. But those are just some things that you need to take heed of, especially if you're in the entertainment space. So that's all for now. If you have any questions about this particular subject or any other tax, accounting, business-related questions, happy to help. All right? Talk to you in the next one. Take care.